Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here. We're having a heat wave. We are having a heat wave in Southern California. I am hot. I've got the fan blasting on me. Tiffany's already checked me a couple of times to make sure that I'm not dewy looking to go on YouTube. But I appreciate everybody being here. I hope the weather is treating you well wherever you're at. Speaking of the weather, I'm a little bit under the weather, so if I lose my voice a couple of times tonight, please forgive me for that. But we are very grateful that you've all carved out some time on your Wednesday evening to be with us. I see a lot of familiar faces, CJ in LA and Best Nancy and Chihuahua Mama. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. We've got a really great show for you because we've got a guest who's new to our channel, but a person that I've been a fan of for some time and somebody that I think you all are big fans of as well. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former criminal prosecutor here in Los Angeles. I was in the DA's office, and then I left there after about 10 years to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. This is Courtroom Confidential, where we try our best to present to you both sides of the courtroom. And this is Wednesday Night Live, where we kind of cover topics that are happening throughout the week, and hopefully we bring you some guests. Tonight's guest is Lawyer Lee. I'm very excited to talk to her because I know that she has been following the Donna Adelson case closely, and she's going to be following it every single day during trial as well. So we're going to talk to her a little bit about jury selection and what to anticipate in that case coming up. But for the time that we have left over, on Wednesdays, we like to do a poll. We haven't been able to the last couple of Wednesdays, but tonight we are. So your poll options for this evening are the case of Trey Dean Wright. This was a young man who was killed in South Carolina by his friends, including his own girlfriend at the time, set him up and killed him, shot him to death. The case of Emmanuel Haro here in Southern California, really sad about a 7-month-old baby who has gone missing, and now the parents have fallen under suspicion. And then finally, the case of Sarah Grace Patrick, another horrific case about a young girl who was 16 at the time that she shot her parents as they slept, then asked the social media community to help find the killer until she was eventually arrested for her death. She was in court for a bail hearing, which was highly emotionally charged. All right, stay to the end. We have announcements. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please, if you have not already, take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to this channel, and share this with anybody that you think might enjoy it. But I'm going to keep my mouth shut for a moment and finally bring our guest on here. Hey, Lee, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me, Josh.
Thank you I know that you were live as of 20 minutes ago talking about a lot of this stuff. And I said, you're very hardworking, and I appreciate you setting aside a few more moments to talk about this stuff with us.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Are you, I don't want you to tell me your exact location, but what time zone are you in? Is it later?
Eastern.
You're Eastern. Yeah. Oh, so it's even later in the evening for you. I'm going to respect all of your time and make sure that squeeze the most information out of you with the short period of time that we have. But the case I wanted to talk to you about is obviously Donna Adelson. Her trial is starting. They're in the second day of jury selection today. It looks like the judge is anticipating they may have a jury by tomorrow. We'll talk about that and whether or not you think that's realistic, which means the opening statements may take place as early as Thursday or even Friday. We'll talk a little bit about the timing of that as well. But I wanted to first kind of ambush you with a different case, and that is the Bryan Kohberger case, because a very interesting article came out today from one of the writers on Fox News Media. And they had done an interview with Jeff Nye, who is the chief of the Idaho Attorney General's Criminal Law Division. This is, of course, the case dealing with the Idaho 4. There we have them: Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. And it was about the IgG in that case, which is the DNA that was recovered from the knife sheath. The process by which they used genetic genealogy to track it down, re-engineer a family tree till they zeroed in on Bryan Kohberger. And it was a little controversial. You remember at the time how they did this, because the state police, along with this lab named Othram, weren't initially able to determine a subject. Handed it over to the FBI, and the FBI runs it through a public commercial genetic database. And they admit that that is technically in violation of the Bureau's own rules. It's not entirely in violation of the law, so the judge allows it. Anyhow, that's my full setup for everybody who had not been in the weeds on that one. But what I wanted to ask you, this gentleman, Jeff Nye, in talking about this, when questioned on how bad would it be if they didn't have this DNA, if the judge had ruled against them and said, no, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, you can't get the DNA. His quote was, it would be devastating because it wouldn't just be the DNA that goes out, the match at least, to Mr. Kohberger. It would be all of the fruit that came from that match, and that's a lot of things. His view was, and here he goes on to say, that's all of the Cellbrite stuff because they don't have his devices to review if they never made the identification. That's all of his cell phone records. Those warrants were issued based on the identification that was made from the DNA. So all of that's gone. It would have put the state in a very bad position to move forward on this case. I've got some strong feelings on this, but I'm curious to hear yours. So that's my huge setup for a question to you.
Okay. Well, there's lawyers have a saying that bad cases make bad law. And this is kind of an example of that. When this case first happened, one of the things I said is this case is going to make law all over the country about IgG, about how it's used, about when it's appropriate to be used. It went even further than that because the FBI admitted that they had used a database that they by policy internally shouldn't have used. And also that by the terms from that particular agency or the DNA was sent to, they weren't supposed to use it. So that there was a rule, don't use that, both internally, and then there was also a rule in the agency that was actually doing the testing. And so what that means is that the precedent was set that it's okay for the FBI to do that. And it's so hard to fight that because who wants to be in favor of Bryan Kohberger getting away? You know, like who is in favor of that? No one is in favor of that. No one. And what he did was so incredibly horrible. You want them to catch him. I agree with you. I don't know that they would have caught him without this. There was a statement, well, we had the white car. Well, how many white cars are there? Even one similar to that. It would have been really difficult, I think, to find him. And so they needed that evidence. But wow, is that a terrible precedent to set that it's okay for the FBI to do that?
You made me think of when I was in the DA's office and I was a baby DA. I had a case where a person was pulled over, and inside by their feet there was recovered a baggie of, I think it was like methamphetamine or something like that. And the defense attorney had ran a motion to say that there was no probable cause for the officers to have opened the door and looked down at the floorboards and discovered this methamphetamine. And the judge was going in their favor, feeling like there was no probable cause. And I, being a very young and very snarky and probably had too big of a mouth on him, DA at the time, said, Your Honor, would we be having this discussion if it was a severed head that were at the floorboards of the car? But my point was kind of your point that and I agreed that even though I got kind of snapped back by the judge, I agree that I'm right, because I think, to your point, yeah, we're breaking a lot of rules here, not the law necessarily, but breaking a lot of kind of protocols. But it was like everybody was sort of thinking to themselves, the ends justify the means. We got to catch this person.
But it's not just for that case.
Right.
Particularly because he isn't allowed to appeal. He agreed not to appeal, meaning that is precedent that will be cited all over the country in other cases as well. Hey, it's okay for the FBI to do this. It's gone through at least one court, and the opinion is it's okay for that to happen. And that violates not just the expectations of the FBI or the expectations of the company that accepted these DNA samples. It also violates the expectations of the people who sent their DNA in, thinking that what that meant was it would be confidential and it would not be available to law enforcement.
Yeah. Again, as you're explaining to this to me, I'm nodding my head and agreeing with you from a very philosophical point of view. And at the same time, I'm saying, don't care. Glad they did it. Glad they were able to figure out who did this. It was such a horrible, horrible crime. But talk to me about the point that he's kind of making, that without that DNA, and probably the judge knew that. And that's why we're talking, that's why the judge found the wiggle room that he did. But do you agree with that were it not for that DNA, there's no case?
I do. I don't see where they would have gotten it. That's not to say they couldn't have gotten it, but where they were at the time, they even had to change the dates of when they thought that vehicle was from. Yeah. They kind of changed it. And so I don't think they were there yet. They didn't have what they needed. I think he's absolutely right. And he would obviously know more than either of us, in that he was intimately involved with actually the investigation. But I think he's absolutely right. They didn't have it yet. They needed that piece. And that was the most critical piece of evidence against Bryan Kohberger. Everything else, like you said, got built from that.
Yeah. Everything else was about confirming that. Everything else was about what are the chances that a person whose DNA is found on the knife sheath at the crime scene would also be driving a similar vehicle to the suspect vehicle, would also have no rock solid alibi for 3 o'clock in the morning, would also have their cell phone pinging off of that location 24 something times in the months leading up to the murder. I mean, it was all building off of that DNA. Without that DNA, I don't even know. Even if they were down the road through just tenacious, miraculous police work, able to zero in on Bryan Kohberger as being even their prime suspect, I don't think they have enough to file a case against him without that DNA. What do you think?
I think it was super important. I don't know what they would have gotten, but as of the time they filed, that was the most important piece of evidence they had by far, not even close.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Nye agrees with us. And I just thought it was interesting to hear somebody, involved in the investigation be as blunt about it as we all have, because I agree. All right, let's switch gears for a second. First of all, I'll say thank you to Clarice Starling for saying good evening from Illinois. I hope you're not going through a heat wave there in Illinois. B Phoebe said it just became a member. Appreciate that, B Phoebe. Farm Girl for gifting a membership. Thank you so much. Gina Gilmore says, hi, Lee. I'll be with you tomorrow. You got this.
Thank you, Gina.
Oh, she's giving you encouragement. Is that for covering the trial? Oh, I love it. You got cheerleading.
I know I'm nervous about that.
Oh, please. It's not like the whole internet's going to be watching. Yes, they are. Joanne M. Jedi Platypus says, gifts a membership. Appreciate that. Only fan for becoming a member. Appreciate you joining the crew. And Mama Pinks, welcome Paraleague Gals and Paraleague Guys. Is that the name of your crew members? The Paraleague Gals and League Guys?
Mama Pinks is one of my moderators, so that's her name for everybody.
I love that.
We use that.
That's clever. That's very clever. I like that.
Yes, it is. It's good.
Yes, Nancy, thank you so much for gifting the memberships. All right. Donna Adelson, the matriarch from Miami, and I just came up with that right now. I'm going to copyright that. She has had 300 potential jurors hauled into court in Tallahassee to potentially sit on jury selection in this case. I've sat through many jury selections. I've participated in many jury selections in my career. I'm sure you have as well. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because this one's being done a little differently in that, and I didn't realize this, the judge has taken each juror individually back into a room, and we have photographs of what that looks like. Here's where they go back into. All the attorneys, the defendant, everybody sitting there, the judge, and question them individually regarding their basically their media consumption on this case. What are their thoughts? How much do they know? Do they have any preconceptions on the case? Have you ever seen that done before, where they do it individually like that?
Yeah, that's pretty common in civil cases. And especially larger civil cases, that a lot of times the defendant will want that particular. And one of what they're looking for is to separate the jurors so that you can ask a question, hopefully get a really honest answer without influencing everybody else. So I think a lot of times lawyers think, yeah, this is going to make it easier for me to get that honest answer and then to be able to use that to, with, possibly get the judge to strike the juror for cause. So I think that's the thinking behind it, is we can ask a lot more questions. And I know they must have been worried that if they said, who here has heard about the case? And someone said, well, oh, I did. I heard all about, and then went into some details, that it could poison that whole pool. So they thought, let's separate everybody and see if we can get just a little bit out, enough so they know about the case, and then we can ask them individually. Well, it was a little unusual to me that they did that on the front end. I'd more experience where you would ask everybody the general questions and then go into individual, but they did it the other way around.
It's interesting that you point out that that's more common in civil cases, because I'm used to criminal cases. I've done a couple of civil cases, and the amount of time that you're afforded in a civil case to do voir dire is just incredible to me, because I don't know what it is, but in the criminal practice, it's like they want to rush through it as fast as humanly possible, and they put so much pressure on the attorneys. And I'm used to, even in very high profile cases, they'll do exactly what you just said. They'll say, anybody heard about this case? Please raise your hand if you know about this case, or you've heard a lot about it, or you've made up your mind about it already. And have you ever tried in a group of 100 people who don't know each other and they're all nervous to get anybody to raise their hand for anything? They just don't do it. Nobody wants to volunteer. And then I've also seen it happen where exactly what you said, some especially extroverted person raises their hand and says, yeah, I've heard about it. And I think that lady's guilty as can be, because I've heard X, Y, and Z. And then you feel like you've contaminated the entire jury pool.
Right. And that can be a real issue. I mean, when you've got a large number of people, and they were doing 50 at a time, so it's a pretty big group, they've got to figure out ways to narrow it down. Or maybe they were even doing 100 at a time and then winnowing it down. Yeah.
It seems like it's very time consuming, though. I mean,
it is.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking, how many people have they? I know that they want to voir dire at least 50 people in the morning tomorrow and 50 in the afternoon. So they must have already pre-screened and qualified 100 people. That just seems very time consuming, but I guess they got through it over the last couple of days.
It is really time consuming. And that's why I think the normal procedure I've seen is you do the general questions first, because you may knock people out from that. And then you have fewer people to do the individual voir dire with. You can just do that with, say half the people, or however many are left over after the general questions.
I wonder, maybe you know about this, sometimes they will, quote unquote, time qualify people before they even respond to the courtroom. Like they'll have the clerk's office determine that if they have any issues with serving on a trial that's 2 weeks long or something like that, which is not all that long for this trial, honestly.
Right. It's really not. It's pretty short. I think they maybe even qualified him for a total of 3 weeks, counting jury selection. So just 2 weeks of actual trial. But it is a long time to serve, but not that long given the case. I mean, Bryan Kohberger was going to be 3 months. That would have been just really difficult to do.
And honestly, what I'm going to say is probably going to rub some people the wrong way. Bryan Kohberger's case, I don't think is nearly as complex as Donna Adelson's case, because of all of the moving parts. I mean, just listing off the cast of characters involved in Donna Adelson's case is exhausting. I mean, you've got her, you got Charlie, you got Wendy, you got McBanois, then you're down to Luis Rivera, then you're I mean, it's just back and forth, and everybody involved. It's a huge cast of people that makes for complexity, but they feel they're going to get through this quickly enough.
Right. You're absolutely right. It is pretty complex, and Kohberger's really was fairly limited evidence.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were going to do for 3 months.
I agree with you. It's, again, when we're talking about how long a trial is going to take, it doesn't really equate to the loss of life. This was a horrific loss of life with Kohberger, and it's a monumentally important case. But really, what you're talking about is one evening, one location, one defendant, a lot of your evidence is not going to take all that long. Yeah, well, we'll never find out what it was going to take that long, but I agree with you. What do you think the prosecution and defense are looking for in jurors? And of course, you and I both know that jury selection is much more about jury deselection. You're trying to get rid of people more than you're actually trying to select people. But what do you think is like the ideal juror for each side in this case?
I think Donna's going to want a juror who has a level of means, so that they don't find her level of means off-putting. The state put in evidence about that last time. Here's how much money they had,
Yep.
which I thought should not have been allowed, but it was allowed. And so that they want somebody who won't be shocked by how many millions they had. They won't find that many, but they'd like to have somebody who won't be shocked. They'd like to have people that they think don't know anything about the case, because I think they figure all the coverage has been terrible. Anyone who knows anything at all about it is going to be already disposed to think that she's guilty. And then when it comes to the state, I think they would love to have people in law enforcement. That's sort of a normal strategic move for the prosecution. They want people in law enforcement. And it was something Charlie really talked about and called out. He thought that the fact that law enforcement people were allowed on his jury meant he couldn't get a fair trial. So we know Donna's going to want those off. The prosecution is probably going to want people with law enforcement experience in.
I love that point that you made. And that's something that people sometimes overlook, is the effect of the cultural divide that may take place between Donna and potential jurors, that they're going to be hearing about large sums of money, and they're going to be hearing about a lifestyle of fairly wealthy people, and how much of that will turn them off just from being, are you kidding me? These entitled people, and it wasn't enough for them. They had to go kill somebody just so that they could have their daughter live where they wanted her to live. That's a very important part of this case that I don't think it's talked about enough, and especially for jury selection. But we know that mainly what it's going to come down to, I don't know what your experience is, but I've always felt that at the end of the day, the people you like get kicked by the other side. The people the other side likes gets kicked by you. And by the end of it, when you both agree to the jurors that you have and the judge swears them in, you take a look over and I swear I'm staring at 12 people I know nothing about.
Right. Very true. Very true. It's a terrifying thing, really.
It is a terrifying thing. Speaking of kind of the idea of optics and perceptions, we talked about her wealth and how people might perceive that. Earlier today, I was watching your live stream, and you talked about something I've been conscientious of, and we've seen proven true. Because, Kaylin, if you got a second, let's see what Donna Adelson has been wearing in the last few days during jury selection, and how do you think this quote unquote costume of hers might play a role in this upcoming trial?
Yeah, she's I think looking rather grandmotherly. She's got a dark cardigan sweater on. I don't see her shoes, but I would assume what they need to be for her sake is old lady shoes. They need to have the thick rubber soles, at least that thick, and they need to be very plain. And then she's got, just a plain collared shirt underneath of a pastel color, or a one color. I think blue the first day and purple the second day. So I think it's very intentional. It's not an accident. I think it has several purposes. One is to say this is an older person. This is, does this look like a grandmother or does this look like a stone cold killer who arranged multiple layers into a murder? Which kind of person do we have here? Is this an innocent grandmother, or is this, a cartel leader, basically? And I think that they're really trying to project the grandmother side. I'm not sure they quite hit it, But I think that's what they want. And I think that's going to be important to their argument too, because I think they're going to cast Donna as just an innocent victim. Charlie came to her and told her, I mean, I assume if they do Charlie's same defense, he came to her and said he had been extorted, and she just, what would she know? She's just a mom, loves her kids. And so that extortion, she just was trying to help him. That was nothing more than her attempt to help him. And they're going to, I think that's probably going to be the argument. Innocent grandmother, clueless. And then it'll be up to the prosecution to prove otherwise.
If they could get away with it, I imagine they would bring in a rocking chair and give her knitting needles during the entire trial, just to paint a picture of this poor old lady who would never harm a fly. She's going to testify, though, or according to her attorneys, they've already kind of previewed the idea that she may take the stand. Again, she's not obligated to, but do you think part of her taking the stand is to help portray this older lady, kind of lost, didn't realize what was happening, was being, her son's being extorted, that whole theme to the jury coming from her own mouth?
Definitely, they're going to want to cast her as that. They're going to want her to project that. But I think she's also critical just of laying out the story for the jury, because there's nowhere that story comes in except through Donna herself. I mean, unless Charlie testifies to it. Charlie could say it or Donna could, but there's really no one else in the world who can tell that story, that particular defense. Now, they may shock us with some brand new defense that we don't know about, just like Charlie did. But assuming she's going to stick with Charlie's defense, I think she or Charlie has to take the stand. And she definitely will want to be projecting grandmother, innocent person. She's going to want the jury to see her as that.
I agree. I think that I think anytime a defendant takes the stand, it's a total kind of long shot Hail Mary attempt, and a lot of it has to do with trying to get some sympathy. This is a great photo here. We saw her kind of trying to work on the crocodile tears when she was explaining the beyond humane living conditions she's in prison, and she's going to turn it on. She's going to turn it on if she wants any hope of convincing a juror to. She's going to turn it on during her direct examination. But as you and I know, the rubber hits the road when it comes to cross-examination. I don't think she's going to be able to keep up the act. A couple of Shy Gal says, "Hi, Lee. I'm so excited you are here. So are we. Thank you so much." Granny Detective became a YouTube member. Appreciate that. Konya Schmidt for gifting the membership. So kind of you. Appreciate that. Jude the Tiger for the super sticker. Thanks for being here. Annie Leg 7581 says she should have spent some money on a round trip ticket. Yeah, what do you think about that? That to me is the irony of ironies, that she's caught at the airport with a one-way ticket to Vietnam, the country that we now have all become extradition law experts on, that we know she can't be extradited from. But it's a one-way ticket, and I imagine her attorneys are still kicking themselves that she couldn't fork over the extra few miles. I'm sure they've got miles, the extra few miles to get a round-trip ticket, and then they could have at least had some argument about this. But how crucial a role do you think that might be?
I think it'll definitely make a difference, and that's something they have for Donna that they did not have for Charlie. So it's something on top of. And they can argue this is her consciousness of guilt. She tried to flee the country. She was very specific about the place she picked too. It isn't like she just went on vacation. She went to a country with a no extradition treaty with the U.S. That was important to her, to pick that kind of country. So it wasn't an accident. It was intentional, and it was related to this case. And she really, from everything, did not plan to come back. That's what I gather from the phone calls. It not only was a one-way ticket, but from her conversation with Charlie, she was getting her affairs in order, and she was not planning to come back to the U.S. This was it. I think she has to be kicking herself over the fact that she didn't move fast enough, that she waited a week.
Yeah. I agree with you. I don't know why she waited too.
I don't either. I think to get the affairs in order.
You couldn't you couldn't find out the results of his trial from Vietnam.
Right.
And they got
Right.
the internet over there. They may not have extradition laws, but they've got the internet.
Right.
Let me ask you about some a legal argument that came up in the last week and get your thoughts on this really quickly. First of all, the defense subpoenaed Wendy Adelson. She's been under subpoena by the prosecution, but the defense also subpoenaed her. I think it was late last week they argued this, but I'm curious to hear you weigh in on this. And the judge ended up quashing that subpoena because she has been granted immunity by the prosecution, but cannot be granted immunity by the defense. You think the judge made the right call here?
I think that's the law. I think he did make the right call. He had to preserve Wendy's right to take the Fifth Amendment. But I also think that it's one of those things that in the end just isn't fair either. It is unfair that the state gets to bring her and the defense doesn't get to bring her. I was a little surprised that it says something about the status of the relationship between Wendy and Donna, that they've reached the point when they can't just work it out, that Donna's attorneys can't give a list to Wendy's attorneys and say, here are the 5 questions. Are you okay with these? And they can't work it out. It just was a no from Wendy's team. I mean, she came to Charlie's trial and without this stipulation, but she's not coming to Donna's trial without the stipulation.
Which is interesting because there's something that the defense feels like they want to ask her that they know the prosecution isn't going to get into, because that's really the only way that they're limited here. They're still allowed to ask her questions on cross-examination, but they're limited by the scope of the direct examination of the prosecution. Do you have any guesses? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I can't imagine what it might be that they want to ask her that would be outside of the prosecution's questioning, which would necessitate them calling her as their own witness.
Well, one of the things that they argued was that the defense did is that it was premature to quash it until you know that she's actually going to take the Fifth. They said, and I did think they had a point on this, and the judge should have held off quashing it. And that doesn't mean he wouldn't do it later, but just until he knew the full scope of it, because it could be that she is on the stand and the questions are completely inoffensive. They are questions that matter to Donna, but that in no way require Wendy to take the Fifth. They don't incriminate her. Now, Wendy's team just said, yeah, it doesn't matter what she's asked, she's going to take the Fifth. So you can't force her to do that. But if I were the judge, I think it would have been a good idea to wait. The defense didn't bother to make a proffer, like, here are the questions we would want to ask her. So we don't really know. I don't think we have a good idea about that. But I did think he really should have waited until he got some further information before he actually went so far as to quash it.
Yeah. Well, that'll probably be appellate issue number 1 or 2 or something. They're just racking up these. I think this judge is fantastic, but that's just how this whole game works. Is they get denied and they go, okay, let's make a note of that. We'll make that argument later on. Another argument that was brought up today is the prosecution is requesting of the judge that they're allowed to present evidence about Donna and Wendy having communications regarding the changing of the last name of the children. This is famously something that took place where I think it was, you know what? People in the chat will correct me where I'm wrong here, but maybe that they changed the children's name, and I believe it was after his death, but they had been contemplating or talking about changing the children's name even before his death. Or maybe I'm all confused here, but they want evidence of that, okay? This conversation, because the children's names now have been stripped of their father's name, and they do go by Adelson. And the prosecution, the judge says, well, what do you need this for? And the prosecution has said, it goes towards motive. And they use this phrase for the idea of erasing the father. The judge, I don't think, has ruled on this. Where do you think he will go on this?
So they made that argument last time too. In fact, Georgia Kappelman used that. They finally changed the name, and with that, the entire connection to the father was erased. He was gone, and used that as an argument in Charlie's case. So, but they didn't really have any connection between Charlie and the changing of the names. Now, they're saying that there is a connection that they have now through emails between Donna and the changing of the name. So that would make it a little bit different to me. I would think the question of how he rules depends on how strong that connection is. If it's just Wendy saying, hey, going to change the names, just FYI, and she says, oh, okay, I'll change the monogram, then that's a little different than if she said, yeah, I think you ought to do it, and was involved. I think the judge is more likely to let the evidence in if there's a strong connection to Donna, and less likely if it's not. But he let it in last time. So I guess the bottom line is he's likely to let it in.
I think you're right too. I think it's got to be more than just some sort of passing comment. It's got to be at least showing that she has an interest in that as well. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about it and I go, well, it's not all that prejudicial either, right? This is always the balancing act that the judge does between probative and prejudicial evidence. It's not all that probative either, but it does show this kind of animosity towards Dan Markel, that they even wanted to erase him from the history of his own children, which is just breaks my heart. But the prejudicial value of it is extremely low as well. It's like, what is the harm? I don't think anybody's going to convict her of murder just over the fact that she wanted to change the children's name. Do you see it differently?
Well, Georgia Kappelman used it. I mean, she used it in her argument. This was something she presented to the jury as important. So if I were the judge, I would take it as this. I'm going to assume this is probative enough that it is something important the prosecution is willing to push for. So now I'm going to look at prejudicial. That's what, if I were the judge, that's how I would do the balancing on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. He has not ruled on it yet. Do you have time for a couple of questions from some of our viewers this evening?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Here is one. I want to make sure I'm highlighting the right one. Nope, I'm not. Oh, here we go. Bookworm 7006 says, does the defense want grandparents on the jury? This is an interesting question. This is always, it always becomes an issue. How much do you want jurors to associate with, identify with? That's the term I'm sure. How much do you want jurors to identify with your defendant? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because I have some thoughts on this.
It's always a double-edged sword on that, because on the one hand, that's the person who can most relate, who can understand your position. For example, someone who has a bad relationship with a daughter or son-in-law, with an in-law. That might be someone who would be able to understand Donna. But on the other hand, that also can be someone who's very judgmental. It's like, well, gosh, I don't like my son-in-law very much, but I've certainly never murdered him. And so, that kind of thinking, it could go either way. And so I think you have to look at the people individually. I think it's really dangerous to make it too generic if the person really has a truly similar life experience. You've got to kind of delve into which way you think they would go with your client. Yeah,
I completely agree with you. People's kind of natural response, I think, is to go, oh yeah, you do. You want people who identify with her. But I have experienced it to work almost the opposite way. I had early on in my career as a defense attorney, we had a client and we had a mock trial performed. It was a client who was accused of sexual misconduct. We put on a mock trial, we presented some evidence, and then we watched jurors through that, two-way glass to see how they would respond to all of this. And to a person, every man was the most vocal about how they disapproved of the defendant. It was a male defendant, female victim, of his conduct. And we were shocked at how kind of vocal they were and how they immediately volunteered their thinking on this. And we realized that, and this is a very broad kind of, I'm casting a broad net here, but we realized that men wanted to show how they didn't approve of another man's behavior toward women. And they wanted that very clear to everybody in the room. But it always taught me a lesson that you can't just say, well, men are going to identify with and defend men, and women are going to identify with and defend women. They sometimes are more critical of people that they share an identity with.
Right. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let me see if I've got some other questions here, and then I'm going to get you out of here. Oh, this is interesting. Pat TYQ brings up an interesting concept that people don't sometimes know all that much about. Why didn't they just agree to voir dire Wendy? And this is kind of to your point. They could have done an offer of proof as to the questions they were going to ask. Another way to handle this is what we call voir dire of a witness, which is not all that common. We usually heard the term voir dire in association with jury selection, but it can also be a practice of talking to a witness outside of the presence of a jury. What do you think about that?
I think they need to do something before Wendy leaves, because when given the way the judge ruled, he has actually quashed the defense subpoena. So that means that when she steps off the witness stand, she's free to leave, she's free to go, and she's made it clear that that's what she plans to do. That's what her lawyer has filed this for. So I think there needs to be some kind of proffer made to the judge prior to the time that she leaves the courtroom, so that there is an understanding of what she would have said, of what she would have been asked, so that whether she would have needed to take the fifth, whether she even wanted to take the fifth. That way it's available for appeal. If you don't do all of that, then you miss out on this information that would have been available for appeal. And Donna might lose for that reason, or on the other hand, the state might lose just because they didn't dot the I, cross the T.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's beholden upon the defense to fight a little bit on that too. I imagine if they don't create more of a record, they might have trouble on appeal, because I agree with you. I think if I were in their position, I would say before I was done with my cross-examination, even, I would say, Your Honor, I want to have a hearing on these other questions I want to ask that are outside of the scope. You've quashed our subpoena. We're never going to get a chance to ask these questions. You are essentially telling us we cannot explore this defense fully through this witness. And therefore, I want it on the record what you're telling me I can't ask of this witness.
Right.
Yeah, that might happen. All right, let me get a couple more here. Psychosaurus Rex wins the best name of the night, says, since Charlie is in the midst of his appeal for a new trial, what are the odds he asserts his Fifth Amendment right if he is called to the stand? I'd hope they'd work that out in advance, though, and just not call him. You go first and I'll go second, because I got some thoughts.
This is such a hard question. I want to know the answer to this too. I can't figure out exactly what I think Charlie is going to do. I think he's overall normally a pretty confident person. We certainly saw that in his trial, and he was very well prepared, and it could help his mother if all he does is come in and tell the exact same story. And he may be so confident that he's sure he can tell the exact same story. The problem is that, as an attorney, that no one tells the exact same story time after time. There are little details and differences and things that happen. And so it will have the potential to hurt his appeal or his retrial should he win on appeal if he testifies, because there will be little differences that can be used to impeach him. So I think it'd be extremely dangerous for him to testify. If I were his attorney, I'd be telling him 100% don't do it, but I don't know whether he will or not.
I agree with you. I think he's on the list just to be on the list. And I know they've transported him to Tallahassee. I know they're playing they're bluffing all the way to the extreme, but I just don't see the prosecution calling him, because when he was testified in his trial, they called him nothing but a liar all day long. We can't believe a word that comes out of your mouth. Why do you want to call that person as a witness? And then he's such a loose cannon for the prosecution. What could he possibly add? And then you're right. At the end of the day, the small of value he could bring to either side, I don't think outweighs him messing up the potential that he has for an appeal. Not that I'm saying he's got good potential, but it would mess up his potential for an appeal. And I think he'll just, he's not been granted immunity. He'll just take the Fifth. I don't see it happening. But Now that I put that out there and it's in the universe, he probably will be witness number one.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. And it's our best question of the entire evening, but it's a difficult one. It says, it's from Ruth Lynn Jasinski, says, Joshua, this is one of your best cats. Love Lawyer Lee. We couldn't agree with you more. Lee, you have a lot coming up, including this is a trial that you plan on being gavel to gavel and covering every single day, following it. Are you going to, you're going to be sitting in court on YouTube and kind of giving us commentary along the way?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Are you excited about it?
I'm very excited about it and very nervous. I am both at the same time.
Well, don't be nervous. You've got a lot of fans, including us, and I'm sure I appreciate your insights, and I will look forward to hearing your thoughts on this case as it goes along. And that is, of course, at Lawyer Lee on YouTube. You can find it. Thank you again so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Tell Lawyer Lee when you next are on her channel how much we appreciate her coming on Courtroom Confidential. Don't go anywhere because now we have our poll results to get to. So I'm looking at Kaylin in my little box here on my screen to get that up and ready to go. But first, I'm going to thank Julia Dunners for the super chat. Lori Darnell looked more polished than Donna does. Great thought on that. Marlon Maestrich says, amazing guest, love from the Netherlands. Oh, wow. Well, hello to Holland. Appreciate you being here. Julie the nurse again. That was supposed to be Lori Daybell, looked more polished than Donna does. Yes, she did. Donna looks like prison has not been treating her all that well. I imagine she is not getting the regular spa visits in prison that she's been getting in her life otherwise. But I also think that works in her favor. Jen Wowza says, hi, Josh. It's Jen Wowza. Heard you attempt it last vid. I had to clear that up. Jen Wowza gave it all the good old college try. Jen Wowza. I think I got it right this time, even without the prompting. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate you. All right. Who won our poll, Kaylin? Emmanuel Haro with 46%. All right, let's get into this one. It is a very sad case. This, you see the pictures of this beautiful little baby and you think to yourself, how could people be so evil in this world? And I'll tell you what, the tragedy of tragedies in this case is no matter who's responsible for it, this child is either in incredible grave danger or has already lost his life. And I think that we have all been watching these types of things for far too long that we probably know where that's already ended up. So even if you believe the parents or don't believe the parents, this young man, this young, beautiful child has probably lost his life. It is a very tragic story, but here is the story. And it's probably one that you all are going to become far more familiar with if you haven't heard about it yet. It's making a lot of news here locally in Los Angeles, but I imagine it will be a case that others will talk about because it kind of follows that same script that we've seen where a child goes missing, the parents become very vocal on local, there they are in front of all the TV cameras, holding up the pictures saying, we're very upset. And again, God forgive me if these people are actually the victims of a kidnapping. And if they really have lost their baby to some maniac out there. Unfortunately, the way things are starting to go, it is not looking like that. And we start to remember cases that we all know that we followed for years, which are very similar to this. So this is out of Yucaipa, California. Emmanuel Haro was 7 months old. The mother claims she was in the parking lot of a Big Five sporting goods store. And she says she was knocked unconscious by a unknown, unidentified perpetrator and someone that she has very little information on. Just says she was knocked unconscious. When she regains consciousness, her 7-month-old baby is gone. If you look there is bruising on her face. I mean, that is at least consistent with somebody who's received a significant blow to their face. However, authorities have already said that they believe that there are inconsistencies with her story. I will tell you this, before law enforcement starts to say something like that, they probably know more than they're even letting on. For them to, on a horrible, horrific case like this, start to tell the media that there are inconsistencies with their stories, that's a problem. Then we find out a little bit more. The father has a prior conviction for child abuse from 2018. Again, doesn't necessarily mean anything happened, but not looking good. The father's vehicle was recently seized by police and they're searching it. That means they're looking into him thoroughly. And then one other thing that was reported today that could or could not be a coincidence is that a fire broke out at another home on the same block as where this family lived. And people are, of course, this is coming under a lot of scrutiny. People are starting to talk, what was that all about? So the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office has given a couple of statements. And like I said, they're very careful, law enforcement, when they start giving statements, because they know that's going to have an effect on the public. It's going to, if they're wrong, it's going to look poorly on them. They're worried about libel and everything else. They also know that their statements can cause investigations to go in different directions. They made the following statement that Rebecca, the mother, was confronted with inconsistencies in her initial statement and declined to continue the interview, meaning she lawyered up, which is interesting. That is something law enforcement can talk about to the public, but that will be something that will likely never come up in a future trial if there ever is one. But she declined to continue with the interview after her inconsistencies were brought up. And they have said that at this point in the investigation, investigators are unable to rule out foul play in the disappearance of Emmanuel, which, when you think about it, is a very bizarre statement to make, because it is foul play. Like I said, whether it's the parents or somebody else, foul play is involved in the disappearance of this beautiful young child. So No Tears I watched, it was reminiscent of Chris Watts. Yeah, I mean, you could go on and on with the list of cases this reminds us of. But again, 7 months old, come on. I mean, are there no other options out there? Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. Just a case that's been coming up that we've been following closely. I watched the language analysis of her statements. He said major red flags. Interesting, says Afton. Thank you for contributing that to us. All right, we've got a little bit more time. Let's get into what was the runner-up in our poll tonight, Kaylin. Kaylin's looking at me like, you got to give me more time than just springing it on me this late. In the meantime, anybody got any guesses on the shirt? Oh, somebody pointed out that I've got the wrong mug. Well, this is what happens, and it's a good, it's Sarah Grace Patrick. We'll get into Sarah Grace Patrick. It's a good lesson for all of us that you can never have enough Courtroom Confidential mugs in your house, because when they're both dirty, your main mug and your backup mug are both in the washing machine. What are you left with? You're left with your pink camper mug, which nobody likes. So don't yell at me. Yell at me for not having enough Courtroom Confidential mugs. So word to the wise, you can never have too many, because you never know if you'll run out. The pink looks stunning on you. Is this pink? Is that what we're guessing? Real men use a pink cup, LOL, while they're wearing a pink shirt. I don't think this is entirely pink, but I'm slightly colorblind, as my wife likes to remind me of on a daily basis. YouTube Bad Actor says it's orchid. The cup, the mug, or me? Kathy Mama Bear says, I have more than 2 CC mugs, Josh. Good. Smart. Always prepare. I know where you can order a new cup. You do. Well, we'll talk more about that. But first, let's talk about Sarah Grace Patrick. But I'm going to thank Travel Gal for becoming a YouTube member. Appreciate that. Thank you, and welcome to the crew. Sarah Grace Patrick. God, every single one of these cases, you could use the word heartbreaking, nightmarish, awful. Here we go again. 16 years old at the time. She's 17 years old now. You look at that and you see a child. I look at that and I see a child. I do not see what she is now being charged with as a cold-blooded double murderer. But that is what the prosecutors are saying she did, and it looks very strongly like that might be true. She is accused, this is out of Georgia, of shooting her mother, Kristen Brock, who was 41, pictured there, along with her stepfather, James Brock, who was 45, pictured there, looked like a happy couple, while they slept in their bed. She then left them there to be discovered by her 5-year-old sister. And this is the part of the story. It's funny how each of these stories are so horrific, but then there's always one part that's kind of the part that just sticks with you. It's the idea that she left it to her 5-year-old sister to carry the trauma for the rest of her life of discovering her mother and stepfather dead, shot in the heads, dead in the bed. I've seen dead people. I've seen photographs. I've seen horrific stuff. It sticks with you, and I'm a full-grown adult. A 5-year-old, I can't imagine what she is going through having had to discover that. Well, after that discovery, quote unquote, Sarah calls 911 herself, and she then starts posting on social media about help find this maniac who's out there. There she is. She's asking for prayers of healing and help from the community to please help me find the person that murdered my mother and father. She even reaches out to a true crime influencer for help. Can you please talk about this? We need to create awareness to find the person who broke into my home and murdered my mother and father while me and my little sister slept. Police now say they have a mountain of evidence, and they eventually zero in on her. She then turns herself in. She has been in custody ever since that time. She's been charged with 2 counts of murder and aggravated assault. She's being charged as an adult, which means that she will likely, if convicted, never see the outside of a prison again. 17 years old as she sits there in court, and the entire reality of what she's done comes crashing down on her head. There was a bond hearing earlier this week. It lasted for 2 hours, and it was incredibly emotionally charged. And this is a case where you might expect, even given the significance of the charges, that the judge might find some way to grant bail. You are talking about a young person. You are talking about a person that this is not some hardened criminal. You might think that a judge might see this in a way to allow her to see the outside of jail while she has her trial pending. Not so much, but because the convincing part to Judge Dustin Hightower, was the statements given by the closest members of Sarah's own family. Her stepbrother, her aunt, people who were closely related to her and her mother and stepfather were the most vocal in court about how you cannot let this person out. You cannot let this person out. She will try to escape. She will try to leave. She is a flight risk. You cannot let this person out because we fear for our own safety. Her own brother, I think it was not able to give a statement, but gave a statement through someone else written, talking about how he feared for his own safety. Jen Wowza, see how I got that right on the first try, says she shot them multiple times each and left them for her little sister to find them, and then she played the victim. The multiple times part is also breathtaking. Do you imagine the moments? Do you imagine what it is like to actually hold a gun in your hand and take somebody else's life? How you have to be wired in the head to actually be able to do that physically, handle that emotionally, mentally, move on from that. People go to war and suffer from PTSD from things like this. And she was able to, in cold blood, murder the both of them and then move on and play the victim. It's so true. Well, she will not be getting out anytime soon. She will be headed to trial. We don't have a trial date set just yet. But until that trial takes place, she will remain behind bars. Just so tragic. 17 years old. Look at her. Child. All right, guys, here's some announcements for the week. First of all, we have Sunday Fun Day coming up. If you would like to leave us a message, the best place to do that is to go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on the leave us a message button all the way there to the right. And then you can leave us a message for this upcoming Oh, January 5th trial for Sarah. Thank you, Tiffany. You can leave us a message that we will answer live this coming Sunday. If you're curious about membership, we're going to thank some of our members this evening. If you're curious about how to become a member, the best place to do that is at thecourtroomconfidential.com, where you can click on the member tab and join the crew. And we would love to have you. And you can also click on the shop and find out about the new merchandise we have, including new colors, one of which I'm wearing tonight. This mug is not included. It is a one of one that I have myself, but we do have new tumblers, including this one says CC Crew on one side and says, let's get juiced on the other. Really, really love that. And then this wine tumbler for when you're having Pinot on the go from Courtroom Confidential. It also says, let's get juiced. A lot of fun stuff that we have in the shop. Please go check it out. What you missed on Monday, we had Anjanette Levy on to talk about Bryan Kohberger. Really fun conversation. Talked a lot about whether or not Bryan Kohberger said Kaylee's name. Spoiler alert, we don't think she did. We don't think he did. But if you want to hear all the ins and outs and specifics about that, please check out that episode. It's already up on the channel. Tomorrow on Courtroom Confidential Live Trials, that's our sister channel. That is not this channel. That's another channel that we have called Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. Please go over there, subscribe, because we are going to be streaming every single day of the Donna Adelson trial starting tomorrow if opening statements begin tomorrow, which they're saying they might, which is shocking to me how quickly it's going to take place. And if I'm one of those attorneys, I'm dying that it's taking place at the end of the week too. But we will be there regardless. So go to Courtroom Confidential Live Trials and follow us there to watch that live where we will be streaming it. Dr. Bull Butter, member for 8 months, says, love the crew and mods and Josh. We love you right back. Appreciate all your support for the time that you've been with us. Also tomorrow, if you're so inclined, I will be on Fox News and here locally on ABC 7 to talk about the Menendez brothers. They have their first parole hearings on Thursday and Friday of this week. So I will be all over the place on the news talking about that crazy case that still doesn't go away after 30 years. Then on Saturday, we're going to have our weekly roundup where we're going to wrap up everything that took place this week, including Donna Adelson's opening statements, including the results of the Menendez brothers hearings. Wow. Love watching you, Josh. It's always great to have a lawyer explain all these cases so well. Sending love from Australia. Appreciate that. Hello, right back at you. Josh, thank you, Josh. A++ on my name. Good. I'm glad. I feel much better now. And then finally, this Sunday is, of course, Sunday Fun Day. Live at 9 a.m. Pacific. Oh, pardon me. Saturday is 8 a.m. for the premiere of the weekly roundup. That will be at 8 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We do a live premiere, but then we go live on Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, where we're going to answer all of your questions. Sunday Fun Day is the place to be. It's so much fun. It's becoming more and more fun every single week. The questions are getting so much better. We travel all over the world. We put you on the map. Please don't miss out. Travel Gal 7074 says, will Donna's mask slip during cross? I think 100%. People can't hold up. They cannot hold up, especially a woman who's been so entitled and unchallenged her entire life. She's not going to be able to help herself. I really don't think so. The same type of narcissistic personality that decided it was a good idea to take the life of the father of her grandchildren is not the type of person who's going to take that kindly to being questioned by somebody on the stand. So we will see. Enviro Law has been a member for a whole year. Thank you, Enviro Law. Says, just realized I'm a year. Well, it said something. Just realized I'm a year of being a CC crew. Well, happy birthday. Happy CC birthday, Enviro Law. I appreciate you. All right. Then finally, we got CrimeCon coming up. It's going to be a blast. I hope that as many of you can be there as you can. I know it's not an easy undertaking. I know we're talking about traveling and buying tickets and everything else, but if you're able to, we would love to see you. And if you need a little bit of help, we have a discount code for you, which is courtroom, all one word, all in caps. Enter it at the checkout and you get a 10% discount. And Oh, thanks. Congrats on 55,000, says Robin off 322. Thank you for that. I forgot to mention that. Yes, we passed 55,000 subscribers, all because of you guys and your support. Also at CrimeCon, we've been nominated. This is a real treat to us because this is something we were not expecting. This was a total treat and a total surprise, and it's very, very touching, and it just makes us feel, we get a lot of really nice support from everybody, and now to have some recognition from the CrimeCon community is also very nice. So we've been nominated for the Outstanding Episodic Series Podcast Award, which we will, along with a group of great people, including Anjanette Levy's podcast. So we'll find out the results of that while we're out there, and we would love for as many of you to be there with us, including some of our new members. So now's the time where I butcher a whole bunch of people's names. We would like to give a very special shout out and thank you to You Who, Got Your Six, Sophia Shudroy, Shootery, Nadia S, Damore, Content Angel, Corey at First Mate May, Figgy Stardust 5, Sarah True Crime, Gloria Webb, Luis Osborne, Polly, Bebo Mora, Heidi HC, Chelsea Whitaker, Rachel Evanston, Diane Riley, Philip Harrell, Sweet Soul, Pam JB, Winter Hardy, Brielle, Roberta Young, Miss Linda, Dr. Vonda K, Wow, just the name Wow, Sierra Juliet. Why do I feel like I know what that means? JC Broadway, E Steele, Weird Debbie M, Temson, Carrie Temple, The Groovy Goat, Wogger, Nitka Ditka, Diamond, Tammy Clips, Teresa Starin Blankley Murray, Kelly, Lisa Cox, April Clendenin, Joanna Riddlehuber, Capri Law, and Dragon Sta. I think I did pretty good with those names. Thank you everybody so much for being here. Special thank you to Lawyer Lee. Next time you're on her channel, tell her that we're sending some love from Courtroom Confidential. Thank you. Big thanks to Kaylin for making everything run so smoothly, for Tiffany for being the best thing that ever happened to me, and to our mods, Afton and Shy Gal, Kathy, and therapists Thank you everybody for all your help and support. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday night, and we will see you again this weekend. Take care, everybody.